Scientists at NIST did not model the collapse of the towers. Their analysis was gravely flawed in many ways, but the biggest flaw was that the scope of their investigation was artificially limited. They took their analysis only to the point of initiation of collapse, as though all that followed was inevitable and needed no explanation. By limiting their investigation to the natural precursors of collapse, plane damage and the fire, they ruled out from the start any possibility of discovering evidence of planned demolition. We are here tracking the motion of the roofline at 0.2 second intervals through approximately 32 meters, or 8 stories. This graph shows the height of the roofline as a function of time. The analysis is simpler if we plot velocity as a function of time. On this kind of a graph, a straight line indicates constant acceleration. First note that there is a sudden onset of collapse, as the point we are tracking makes a sudden transition from being at rest to an approximately constant downward acceleration. The slope of the graph indicates that the acceleration is 6.31 meters per second squared downward, which is 64% of free fall. As long as the top section of the building is in uniform downward acceleration, it cannot possibly be providing sufficient force to destroy the building. You might think a falling block coming down on the lower section of the building would exert a greater force than a stationary block. But that is true only if the falling block actually impacts the lower block, which would cause the falling block to decelerate. The only way the falling block can continue to accelerate smoothly, as we see here, is for the lower section of the building to give way without significant resistance. The top section of the building, whatever its condition, cannot possibly be destroying the lower section of the building. The destruction of the building must be caused by something else. There's a tremendous amount of falling debris, but under the canopy of debris, do you see the rapid sequence of explosive ejections of material? Some of the jets have been clocked at over 100 miles per hour. I will call them explosions because it's hard to find other words that describe what we are seeing here. The explosions are not isolated and few. They are continuous and widespread. They move progressively down the faces of the building, keeping pace with the falling debris. Notice that the explosions are occurring on multiple floors at once, over a wide zone, not in a floor-by-floor sequence that might be explained by pancaking collapse. Notice there are explosions far below the point of collapse. Some are isolated and focused. These are often referred to as squibs and are commonly seen in controlled demolitions. However, this is not a standard controlled demolition. The building is being progressively destroyed from the top down by waves of explosions, creating a huge debris field. The destruction is in waves, not just in one wave. Most obvious is a rapid sequence of explosions near the visible corner of the building. But simultaneously we can see another wave of explosions much further down the face of the building under the canopy of falling debris. Notice that the concrete is being forcefully ejected outward from the sides of the building, already pulverized to dust. Notice that embedded in the dust clouds are huge girders and entire sections of steel framing that are being hurled out of the building. The horizontal speed of some of the girders has been clocked at over 70 miles per hour. What could hurl heavy girders with such force and give them such speed? Some people have suggested that the weight of the tower crushing down on the girders caused them to flex, and they sprung sideways by a spring action. But we are not seeing isolated jumping girders. We are seeing a major fraction of the mass of the building, steel, concrete, office furniture, and the remains of human beings, reduced to small pieces of rubble and fine dust, and being explosively ejected in all directions. Bone fragments are found on the roofs of adjacent buildings. The bones were not crushed in the falling mass, or they would have been trapped in the debris pile. They were pulverized along with everything else and blown out in all directions.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails.
Molten metal was seen coming out of the northeast corner near the 80th floor. The red-yellow metal poured from the tower along with a shower of sparks, and looked like steel in a foundry. And there were many eyewitnesses that described molten steel. Later, we learned of very small spheres of iron found all through the dust. That iron must have been molten, allowing surface tension to pull it into those spheres. NASA took photos indicating very high temperatures days after the event, and Firewise professors were perplexed by melting of steel beams. Independent scientists began to piece that evidence together, and they suggested some type of thermitic material must have been used as part of the tower's demolition. Then, an independent peer-reviewed report was published which found explosive red-gray chips all through the dust and positively identified as nanothermite or superthermite. Unlike conventional thermite, this stuff is a very high-tech explosive and confirmed what the independent scientists had been saying all along. It's more likely that any pre-weakening thermitic material were hidden inside the perimeter box columns. I had a replica of a segment of the WTC box columns made up, and like the Trade Center iron workers, I bolted the segments together and made 2 sets of my 2 bolt blasters, placing them in the access hole. Let's listen to another eyewitness.
Like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden 3 big explosions.
Is it even possible that thermite could do this? I guess it is. I made a 4-sided box cutter split in 2 pieces so they could be inserted inside the column. I held it up on the burnt out bolt blasters and thought I could hold it down with magnets. Let's see what happens. I think my box cutter blew about 30 feet up, consuming valuable energy and trimming my tree in the process. Nevertheless, the inside of the column was cut about 3/4 of the way through. Were thermitic devices or maybe explosive nanothermite sprayed inside those box columns? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure why this handhold is so large, or why the side of this box column looks like it's blown outward, or why 3 columns have a more intense glow, followed by 6 columns that don't, followed by another 3 that do. But I have an idea. But I do know that it's impossible for jet fuel or an office fire to melt steel or iron, which means the official story is wrong. Yet despite all the overwhelming evidence of explosions in molten steel, some people still believe that this is aluminum and believe Building 7 fell naturally from an office fire. Isn't it time we use physical science rather than political science to investigate 9/11?
Most of us who have lived with the events of 9/11 have, as a result, experienced some kind of trauma. It can be very difficult to come to terms with what actually happened at the World Trade Center. In fact, someone told me recently, "I wouldn't believe what you're telling me even if it were true." Our petition signers with psychological expertise have stepped forward to offer their insight. While this segment is clearly outside the knowledge base of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, these experts in psychology highlight their valuable experience for us as to why this evidence can still be so difficult for people to accept.
As we know, the horrors of what happened on 9/11 were televised all over the world, and they were televised, in fact, live. We witnessed the deaths of almost 3,000 of our fellow Americans. We know this had a very severe and traumatic impact on a large a majority of the population. At this point, we have 9 years of hard scientific evidence that disproves the government theory about what happened on September 11th, and yet people continue to be either oblivious to the fact that this information exists or completely resistant to looking at this information. So the question becomes why? Why is it that people have so much trouble hearing this information? From my work, I think we would be remiss not to look at the impact of trauma.
Many people respond to these truths in a very deep way. Some have a visceral reaction like they've been punched in the stomach. To begin to accept the possibility that the government was involved is like opening Pandora's box. If you open the lid and peek in a little bit, it's going to challenge some of your fundamental beliefs about the world.
If we can think of our worldview as being sort of our mental and emotional home, I think all of us will do just about anything to defend our homes, to defend our families. And so I see that with people, and I saw that with myself when my brother tried to talk with me about it, of don't mess with me, don't mess with my home, don't mess with my comfort with how things are. About a week later, I read a lengthy article by Professor Griffin about why he believes the official account of 9/11 cannot be true. And it was a very well-researched article. It was in my office at the time. I sat there and I felt my stomach churning. I thought maybe I was going to be sick. And I leaped out of my chair and ran out the door and took a long walk around the block, around several blocks, and just broke down. I understand now that what was happening was my worldview about my government being in some way my protector, almost like a parent, had been dashed, and it was like being cast out into the wilderness, I think is the closest way to describe that feeling. And I sobbed, felt like the ground had completely disappeared beneath my feet. And I knew at some point during the walk that I knew that I was going to have to become active in educating other people about this, that for me to retain any sense of integrity, I was going to have to take some action. I couldn't just let something like this go.
When we hear information that contradicts our worldview, social psychologists call the resulting insecurity cognitive dissonance. For example, with 9/11, we have one cognition, which is what the official story of 9/11, what our government told us, what our media repeated to us over and over, that 19 Muslims attacked us. On the other hand, we have what scientists, researchers, architects, engineers are now beginning to tell us, which is that there is evidence that shows that the official story cannot be true. So now we've lost our sense of security. We are starting to feel vulnerable. Now we're confused.
9/11 truth challenges the beliefs that our country protects us and keeps us safe, and that America is the good guy. When your beliefs are challenged, fear and anxiety are created. In response to that, our psychological defenses kick in, and they protect us from these emotions. Denial, which is probably the most primitive psychological defense, is the one most likely to kick in when our beliefs are challenged.
And it's a very, very uncomfortable state to be in. And eventually our mind shuts off. Just like when a computer is overloaded, our minds get overloaded. We can't handle it anymore and we shut down.
And what some of us will tend to do is deny the evidence that's coming our way and stick to the original story, the official story, and to try to regain our equilibrium in that way. Another thing we can do is decide to look at the conflicting evidence and be sincere and be open-minded and look at both sides of the issue and then make up our own mind about what reality is. Here are a few of those spontaneous initial reactions to hearing the contradictory evidence about 9/11.
I don't want to know the truth, or I'd become too negative and psychologically go downhill. I'm not sure I want to know. If this is true, then up would be down and down would be up. My life would never be the same.
They say, this is the way the world works, and I'm convinced this is the right way the world works. 9/11 doesn't fit into that paradigm. So I don't need to look at the evidence.
Fran, I refuse to believe that that many Americans could be that satanically treasonous. Someone would have talked. But these are beliefs. They are not scientific facts. But these beliefs do keep us from looking at the empirical evidence. Whenever we say, I refuse to believe, we can be sure that the evidence that's coming our way is not bearable and that it's conflicting with our worldview much too much. As I thought about all of these responses, I realized that what is common to every one of them is the emotion of fear. People are afraid of being ostracized, they're afraid of being alienated, they're afraid of being shunned, they're afraid of their lives being inconvenienced, they'd have to change their lives, they're afraid of being confused, they're afraid of psychological deterioration, they're afraid of feeling helpless and vulnerable. And they're afraid that they won't be able to handle the feelings that are coming up. None of us want to feel helpless and vulnerable.
Healing comes through facing the truth, experiencing it, allowing the feelings to come in, so that if there are feelings of fear that perhaps these events were caused by something that we haven't thought about yet, dark elements within our society, for example, we'll let that come in and explore it. Let the light shine on whatever happened. This will be the most healing process. The Germans did this after their war. The South Africans did this after apartheid. Reconciliation through the truth is what is a deep path to psychological recovery from the myths and lies around which this historic event has been cloaked in the official view.
One of the ways to deal with the trauma is to find the answers. That's why I think it is of such importance to have a comprehensive investigation.
To work together to expose what happened, regardless of where the evidence takes us. That's what we expect in our state government, law enforcement. I think that by putting science together with the law, we will have a psychological healing around the impossible cognition that has been produced on that day.
After World War II, part of the way that Jewish people honored the dead was by making sure that the truth was known and that the value of these people was respected. Not pursuing the truth about 9/11 disrespects the value of the life of the people that died. Thinking that we're above such things, that it could happen in other countries, but it couldn't happen here, that's a lack of humility, and that's excessive pride. And so not being able to see our dark side or our weaknesses is the most dangerous thing.
A feature of American history that makes us particularly liable to this pride is this notion that's called exceptionalism, that America is the exceptional nation. And that began from the beginning. As this country was formed, the people would say, well, there was so much evil in the European countries, so much cheating, so much lying, so much using the people for the ruler's purposes, but not in America. We have leaders that are free from those sins. So I think this has made 9/11 particularly difficult for Americans.
So we need to understand that questioning is patriotic. Questioning is what we're supposed to do as citizens. That's our duty.
One thing that has become important for me personally is to educate myself, is to take responsibility. There's that wonderful quote from Mahatma Gandhi where he said that we must be the change that we wish to see in the world.
When we come to the national level, when something like 9/11 happens, we need to be sure that we have a real investigation into who the perpetrators are, and then we need to be sure that those perpetrators are held legally accountable. It's part of the healing process on the individual level as on the collective level. We need the truth in order to heal.
No second plane. It was a bomb. Bombed another building, not second plane. That was a bomb. Who said the second plane?
That's what we're told, the second plane.
No,
we saw it on television.
I saw everything.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. This is...
Stephanie Hritskovyan is the daughter of a Ukrainian immigrant who owned the Beekman Deli, a thriving family business that served office workers from the Twin Towers for a quarter century. Osama bin Laden's terrorist attack devastated her life.
When the president said that they got Osama, I sat there crying. Because I was so happy they got that. Because he ruined our lives.
Hritskovyan's deli went from making $25,000 a week profit to nothing.
We were sitting pretty before that. After that, that all disappeared.
The deli folded, and the location is now occupied by a Bank of America ATM center. Nearby is one of the office buildings formerly served by the Beekman Deli. Like many older buildings in Lower Manhattan, it was abandoned by businesses and reconverted for residential use after 9/11. The area now has 56,000 residents, more than twice the number it had 10 years ago. Luis Vasquez is among the newcomers.
Today, the financial district has the highest concentration of households with children in the city.
So many that the New York Times dubbed the area the diaper district. The local baby boom is hard to miss. Scores of children play in a riverfront park. Mothers push baby strollers down side streets, this one by the former Beekman Deli. Jocelyn Zoland saw one of the planes crash into the World Trade Center.
It's nice to see that in the shadow of that, yes, Lauren, in the shadow of that, everything has, there are all these children and there are all these activities, and it has become a wonderful, destination. We'll see if things change, though.
Zoland says that change could include millions of tourists expected to flood the area with the completion of a 9/11 museum at Ground Zero, and tens of thousands of new office workers that will occupy Freedom Tower, a skyscraper being built to replace the Twin Towers. But the Beekman Deli is gone. Many neighboring businesses remain shuttered. Stephanie Hritskovyan says what did not disappear was the deli's obligation to pay its lease through 2004 as well as taxes. Those debts cost Hritskovyan $500,000 in savings. She now rents out her home and lives with relatives.
We have no health insurance. We have no 401k. We have no retirement fund. We have nothing. after 9/11.
Lower Manhattan promises to overcome the aftermath of 9/11 with more vitality than ever before. But Stephanie Hryckowian is unemployed and still struggling to cope with the devastation of bin Laden's attacks. Peter Fedinsky, VOA News, New York.
Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex is on fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing.
You hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down. The building is about to blow up. Move it back.
Is Building 7 at the World Trade Center, and that building is in danger of collapse as it continues to burn.
According to authorities at this moment here in Lower Manhattan, and that is the growing fear that another building in the World Trade Center complex, which was not struck by an airplane, is in danger of collapsing.
Medical student, he was down there, he was trying to help people. His name is Daryl.
Yeah, so I was just standing there, you know, we were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and you know, we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was, well, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building.
There's still concern about a building right there.
And the windows all busted out, and you know, it was horrifying.
One of those buildings, building 7, I believe we said, in danger of collapsing.
Miller realizes that 7 World Trade Center is next to fall.
See what the white smoke is? You see this thing leaning like this? It's definitely going to happen. There's no way to stop it.
No tall building had ever collapsed primarily due to fire. But that's exactly what investigators believe happened to the 47-story World Trade Center Building 7 on September.
Had moved back from that building before, which you're about to see again here on videotape, knowing that fire could not be fought because of the instability of the structure, because of the fire that had burned since shortly after 9 o'clock this morning.
Dana Tyler is joining us.
Looking like a Three Stooges movie covered in plastic, I swear to God. But he got good shit, man. That's some good shit. Then we went back there. Whoa, 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 whoa!
If anybody out there can help, any vendors who have food or supplies, the firemen have no food, nothing but snacks. They need fluids, they need water, and they need protein foods. This is just the beginning of what they're facing. So we need masks. We need TB masks. Holy shit! What is it?
It just went down.
What just went down?
World Trade 7.
It did.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Engineers are not just focusing on the Twin Towers. The most disturbing structural event was not that the Twin Towers fell, but that Tower 7, ignited by flying debris, fell due to fire alone.
The failure of the building was an implosion, so it failed completely different than Towers 1 and 2, in which the floors failed first.
About an hour after the actual explosion, which was about 9:15 in the morning. If you wanted to calculate a time to cause maximum disruption, you would calculate that time as the start of the working day and perhaps the biggest, busiest complex in the world.
seen. This is Building 7 in the World Trade Center area is collapsing. Now, whether we don't even know whether this was something that was engineered for safety reasons or it just happened as a consequence of the two collisions this morning.
And since the most recent collapse, which happened just a short while ago, Building 7, a 47-story building as part of the World Trade Center complex, collapsed. That building had been, we were told, completely evacuated. But the fate of people on the ground, including rescue workers, as it came tumbling down, we simply don't know. But it had been threatening to collapse, had been on the verge of collapse for a long while, so perhaps most of the area had been evacuated, but who could have anticipated this kind of incredibly dense
Late this afternoon, just before 5:30 p.m., the number 7 building at the World Trade Center also collapsed. NBC
You should move out of your apartment, Fabiana. Yes. You've got Carolina here?
Yes. They advise us to leave because we have...
Oh my God. Look behind us. Please pan in this way. Please be careful of your baby. This is it.
That's the building coming down.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. No. No. Listen. We'll be all right. We'll be all right.
We're okay. I think we're okay. Ashley, I think we're okay.
All right. We're going to have to move this way. We're going to have to move. We're going to have to move. That cloud is coming this way.
Yeah. Ashley, get out of there. Leave the camera.
By police that you should move out of your apartment, Fabiana. Yes. You've got Carolina here?
Yes. They advise us to leave because we have...
Oh my God. Look behind us. Please pan in this way. Please be careful of your baby. This is it.
That's the building coming down.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. No. No. We're...
There are going to be a lot of claims and counterclaims in the course of the next 24 hours or so.
I referred to it.
Looks like 7 World Trade Center just collapsed. Look at this. Unbelievable.
I told you that sucker was going to go.
That's coming here, isn't it?
What, the cloud?
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
A 47-story skyscraper. It's converted all of its gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy. Therefore, it can't crush the 40,000 tons of structural steel that's holding it up and fall.
Yeah. I got it.
Rick used time-lapse mode to conserve tape, so 2 seconds of real-time recording is followed by a 6-second pause. The first footage is shortened and speeded up to get straight to the collapse.
Here's an update now from the 1010 Winds newsroom. Later tonight, we expect to hear from President Bush. That plane was debuted, and here's Matt Ward. Manager difficulties around the area. New Jersey Transit outbound Hoboken Terminal operating on a load-and-go basis, no inbound service, and also out of Newark Penn Station, limited service on the Northeast Corridor and North Jersey coastline.
Look at it now as you continue to describe what you have seen. We're looking at the tape now, Jeff.
Okay, good. This once again happened only within the last few minutes. We saw one
command center. The original command center, called the Bunker, was housed inside 7 World Trade Center. That building collapsed on September 11th after burning much of the day. The first bunker cost $13 million. It was built to withstand hurricane strength.
The World Trade Center. According to Con Edison, potentially dangerous chemicals were kept in 7 World Trade Center. Con Ed says before that building collapsed, it housed 109,000 gallons of oil and hundreds of pounds of potentially dangerous chemicals in 2 electrical substations.
Succumbed to a raging oil fire within and fell to the ground.
I didn't see any reason for that building to fall down the way it did, and a lot of guys should be saying the same thing.
Watching all day. This is like watching the collapse of an active volcano, and the dust from it is not unlike that from a volcano. We are on the phone with New York Fire Department Lieutenant David Restuccio. Lieutenant, where are you right now?
I'm at the corner of Northmore Street and Greenwich Street.
Can you confirm it was number 7 that just went in?
Yes, sir.
And you guys knew this was coming all day?
We had heard reports that the building was unstable and that it eventually would either come down on its own or it would be taken down. I would imagine it came down on its own, and we are just awaiting now at our triage for any other casualties or any other injuries.
Everybody all right where you are, Lieutenant?
Very, very much so.
They actually used the word brought down, and who was it that was telling you this?
The fire department. And they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down. And for us, there, observing the nature of the devastation, it made total sense to us that this was indeed a possibility.
He says, well, you got to stay behind this line because they're thinking about bringing the building down. They didn't say what building, they just said bringing a building down. So we're like, okay, we'll take their word for it, we'll stay behind the line.
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
For the first time, we have shown that fire can induce a progressive collapse.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
I copy that. Yeah, I can talk. Copy that. Go ahead. I'm ready. Well, what from we can see right here as we were coming up the Hudson River, we can see thick black smoke indicating the fire is still going on right now in the World Trade Center for as far as the eye can see. And you can tell right here at the top of this tower there's a huge gaping hole, flames still inside, thick black smoke still coming out. We have not been able to see what, if any, kind of an aircraft is inside the building. This is the best vantage point right here, and as you can see, just a huge gaping hole throughout the entire side of this tower right now. We are simply not close enough right at this point. We are following the smoke in the air right now. There are several boats and watercraft, as we can see, in the river right now. We'll try to get a better vantage point and see what we can see on the ground. It's a little difficult from the air because the buildings kind of shadow the streets, but no doubt a lot of activity on the ground right now. Wow. That apparently does look like it is in the other building at this point. Back off. They're telling us to back off.
Xbox One S, starting at $299.